Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Ron at SceneGrinder, and in this video I'm going to give you a introduction to what we mean by customizing SceneGrinder to work with any RPG system. Now other videos will go into technical details, but this is just kind of a high-level overview. So what we mean is there's two parts to customizing. The first one is taking all the information you've got on your character sheet, whether it's 5e or Pathfinder or Star Wars or Homebrew system, and storing that information in SceneGrinder. And also on the right-hand side with all the dice, making sure that when you go to do something in SceneGrinder, that it correctly defaults the dice and any modifiers associated with those dice. And also makes additional modifiers easy for you to use if needed. So I'm going to pause the video for just a second. Okay, so what I'm showing you now is the 5e character sheet in SceneGrinder, and I'm playing as Big Earl. And just a note on this page and the other pages you're going to see, just like I mentioned with the UI for SceneGrinder, what I'm showing you now is how everything looks when we've been doing our testing. These character sheets are going to go through major interface revisions before we get to beta. So don't worry too much about how exactly things look. For today, just focus on the functionality that's there. So on the left-hand side, you see a bunch of different tabs, and this is where you can get to all of your different information. But talking about defaulting die rolls, we just go to attacks real quick. And you can see Big Earl's got one attack. He swings a big stick. It's a great club. It's bludgeoning. You can see we defaulted the attack dice to d20. He gets his attack modifiers of strength and proficiency, and d8 damage with a strength modifier on top of that. So the way you would use that is you go over here to your attacks page and click attacks, and then you get to the roll screen. So as you can see, once I get to the roll screen, all that information is defaulted, and as a player, all I need to do is click and do an attack, and then click and do a roll. So that's what we mean by customizing SceneGrinder. So now let me show you just a little bit of the technical details behind the scenes on how you set up that customization. And again, this is going to be very high level. We'll get into more details later. Okay, so on the right-hand side, we've got the master 5e template that we've created. And like I've mentioned before, the customizations that we make are going to be freely available to the community, and the community can also make whatever customizations they want to make for their favorite games, or modify what we've done, and you can share it amongst yourselves. So in the template, what you'll do is you'll define the broad categories for your character sheet, and this is going to roughly match what you see on the screen over here. We've got a couple things like this thing called checks and effects and lighting and summary that don't match up over here, but we'll talk more about those later. So let's just take ability scores first. So you can see in the template, I've created this category called ability scores. And all you do is you've got the 6 ability scores listed that you're all used to seeing. And then underneath strength, for example, you've got strength, and this is just where we identify how it's going to display to the player. So the name of the field is going to be strength. And then there's also this short name, which is used for formulas. And you've got things like a strength has to be at least 1. It could be a max of 30. And there's other things down below that I'll cover later on, but that's kind of the key point. And then, as you know, strength can be used as a modifier in rolls. So there's a modifier field that you'll add. And then you just give that field a name and give it a short name, and this is what you'll use in formulas. And then we've got listed as expression here, but this is a formula. And so this formula right here is basically the standard 5e calculation for how to determine the strength modifier that you see here on the left-hand side. And that's basically all you do to create that modifier. And then there's also this thing over here, this checkbox called modifier, and if you check that, then whenever you're setting up anything that could use a modifier. So that could be an attack, it could be a skill. That strength modifier will be available there for the player and the GM to select. And just a note about these formulas, we will explain these formulas in details, and there's some help text down below. The number of formulas that you'll use for creating customizations is pretty small. It's a half dozen now. It might be 12 or 14 by the time we get to beta. So you're not going to need to learn a extensive code library or extensive formula library for doing the customizations. You'll just learn a handful of these formulas, and that's what you'll use for all of your customizations. And I think that's it for this demo. So if you've got any questions, then definitely feel free to let us know, and there'll be more details coming. Thanks, everybody. Happy gaming.